At last, I'm late as hell, but at least we got here, right? Find somebody who knows somebody to tell somebody about what's going on over here. If you like it, let me know. Share it if you do. And subscribe if this is what you're looking for. Before we get started, though, let's set some mood here. Let's get our mood. There we go. Foundation residue, boogie downs got the flavor. Fair use, fair use. Tighten up a few things here. I'll be right back. Let's take this down a notch just before I catch a strike for no reason. All right, so what are we going to be talking about today? We're going to be talking about Trump's relationship with HBCUs having been a sham. Now, before I go a little bit further, everybody knows how this works. Anyone who doesn't make it here during the live broadcast, well, of course, we know we've got the replay game. So if you need to catch this during replay, by all means, please do so. Otherwise, if you happen to join while I'm live, come on, have a conversation with me. If you feel bold enough and you're not going to be a disruption, I may even invite you up. That's not always a standing case, but understand it'll be a case-by-case basis. All right, so kicking it off right about now, the first thing that I want to do here is give everyone a bit of a background about executive orders. Now, this is not going to be a full course. Matter of fact, it's just going to be a quick background check, because I know a lot of folks are asking the question, what's the deal with Trump and all these executive orders? Well, the executive orders allows the president to go around Congress for certain actions, but Congress still has to have a say eventually. But rather than me sit here and explain that, let me let you read it for yourselves, all right? 5 facts about executive orders that may surprise you. 1, every American president but one has issued an executive order. Number 2, executive orders are not laws but carry the force of law. Number 3, the president derives authority to issue executive orders from either the Constitution or Congress. Number 4, executive orders do not require congressional approval. And number 5, courts may strike down executive orders that run afoul of the Constitution or were issued without proper authority. So that's the situation that we're looking at right now with Donald Trump and a lot of the executive orders that he's put out into the wild. Some of these have crossed the line, aka a bridge too far, that judicial intervention has been required. But we've seen what he's doing if you take action against his orders as of right now. We've seen here recently that he's arrested a judge. Matter of fact, I think he's arrested 2. One has already been released, and I believe the other one has as well. But you can check around here in the news to verify this. But definitely, he did arrest a judge last week. So we can see he's getting bolder and bolder about what he's doing in this particular administration, because he's gotten rid of all the guardrails. Think about it. There's no IG. He is pretty much gouged out the military. He's got all the heads of the services who are loyal to him. The FBI director, a conspiracy theorist, Kash Patel. No qualifications whatsoever for his position. Dan Bongino, another conspiracy theorist. No qualifications as well. Both of them now in charge of the FBI, conspiracy theorists. Patel, as soon as he got in the office, wanted to set up a bat line to run directly to the president's office. What are you going to do? Again, guardrails are off. There's no telling where this is going. The train is rocking back and forth on the rails. Nothing more to say about that, right? But nonetheless, we are seeing now that the courts are getting involved with some of these executive orders that, for lack of a better expression, are rocking the boat severely right now. But stay tuned. This is far from over, obviously. So having said that, let's take a look at the situation we have right now. So the situation here goes back to the HBCU issue that came along with Donald Trump. Not saying it was a problem before, but the focus that was coming to this. So if we can call back in 2017, Donald Trump had pledged a commitment to HBCUs. So somewhere between the 8th and the 17th of May, 2017, there were rumors that were starting to circulate about whether or not it was going to be an issue with Donald Trump funding HBCUs. So here's a statement that he put out there just to calm everybody's nerves, or so to speak, calm everybody. The statement that accompanied my signing of the Consolidated Appropriations Act 2017 sets forth my intention to spend the funds it appropriates, including the funds for historically Black colleges and universities, consistently with my responsibilities under the Constitution, Trump said Sunday. It does not affect my unwavering support for HBCUs and their critical education missions. My commitment, he says, remains unchanged. My commitment remains unchanged. Now, we still have to keep in mind here what Donald Trump's commitments are, but more so what history he subscribes to that would give any indication that he would abide by whatever it is that he's saying. Let's be honest about this. Donald Trump is duplicitous. We know this. He'll say one thing, shit in his hand, and smack you in the face if you look in a different direction with the one that's got the shit inside of it. All right? Completely misrepresent his intentions. So the question would be, what would be brewing in the background regarding the issues with the HBCUs? All right, so let's read a little bit further. At issuance is one sentence included in a statement the president released upon signing the omnibus appropriations package. My administration shall treat provisions that allocate benefits on the basis of race, ethnicity, and gender in a manner consistent with the requirement to afford equal protection of the laws under the Due Process Clause of the Constitution's Fifth Amendment. The statement read, including it noted the historically Black college and university capital financing program account. We'll come back to the capital financing program account here in just a moment. That program, created more than 50 years ago when Congress first passed the Higher Education Act, provides low interest loans to HBCUs to finance infrastructure improvements on their campuses. But to qualify for the capital financing program, HBCU organizations pointed out in the wake of the administration's statement, institutions must meet criteria based on mission, accreditation status, and year the institution was established, not race. So once again, what you have here is Donald Trump adding bits and pieces to an action, so he leaves what we'll call an Easter egg. I'm sure everybody has heard that in the movies, right? An Easter egg is there that's hidden that you can look for or refer back to if you need to have some point in time for a particular action to take place. So as it was saying, the only thing that's required would be the year the school was first created or went into business, as well as, here, let me go back and be specific about this. Here we go. Institutions must meet the criteria based on mission, accreditation status, and the year the institution was established, not race. So again, race had nothing to do with this, but for whatever reason, Donald Trump included that in there so he could create an Easter egg or a narrative that he could use later on. Because when we talk about the Constitution, we know there are areas of the Constitution that deals with race, gender, sex, and so forth. All that falls into this. But what Donald Trump was trying to do was create this umbrella, whereas if he needed to, he can slide something under that umbrella to give him some influence down the road. So let's go ahead and step back into this. The provision in the President Trump's signing statement regarding the critical HBCU program may simply be lawyers at the Office of Management and Budget being overly cautious and perhaps not fully understanding the legal basis for federal HBCU programs, the United Negro College Fund said in a statement over the weekend. However, these programs may have been thoroughly vetted by Congress and prior administrations, and the new administration must eliminate any doubt as to their constitutionality. The organization said it sought clarification from the White House and received informal assurance from administration officials that the paragraph is not intended to indicate any policy change for the HBCUs and that it intends to continue implementing the HBCU capital financing program. So the biggest question now is, what is that particular program that's being referred to, right? And here for a second, we'll just jump past for a moment. All right, so I went ahead and found some information that can fill in some of the gaps as we go along. The capital financing program has specific requirements that depend on whether you're a business or an institution. For example, the SBA capital financing program requires businesses to be operating for profit, located in the U.S., and meet SBA size standards. The HBCU capital financing program requires eligible institutions to be designated as historically Black colleges and universities and meet credit criteria, including showing the ability to repay. So let's go down here to where we deal with the HBCUs. For institutions, like an HBCU, be an eligible institution. For the HBCU capital financing program, the institution must be designated as a historically Black college or university. Meet credit criteria. The institution must demonstrate its ability to repay all debts based on financial analysis. Provide collateral. The institution must provide sufficient collateral for the loan. Meet loan and bond covenants. The institution must meet the terms and conditions of the loan agreement. And then also consider loan and bond covenants. The institution must meet the terms and conditions of the loan agreement. Where in here do you see anything that deals with race? Nothing at all deals with race. But as I said before, this was just a statement Donald Trump used to create himself some operating room if he needed to make changes. And as you've seen with this man, if there's a crack in the floor, he'll get a crowbar, work it open a little bit, get a jackhammer, further get it open more, and then pull it to the point, pause, to where he can start inserting whatever legislation or crackpot ideas he has to augment his position. So back in 2017, that statement was just the start of things to come. So in the end, the signing of the bill was something that Trump ended up doing only because of the fact, or let me take that back. It became something significant down the road because of the fact that the bill had lapsed at one particular point. So the bill lapsing is what created this stopgap or gap, so to speak, that everyone was wondering, hey, is this bill going to get signed or not? Now, prior to him signing this, there was a Republican senator by the name of Lamar Alexander from Tennessee who was getting ready to end his time, in Congress. And what he needed to do was have some type of landmark bill or something put in place that would cement his legacy. All right, so keep that in mind right now as we keep going through this. So what I want everyone to think of right now is that you've got Trump talking about, I'm going to respect what needs to be done for the HBCUs, right? And underscoring his support for it. Now, plenty of lip service that we're hearing from him, but here's something else that's going on in the background. So let's say that at a particular point in time, Trump gathers Black leaders into his office, or the Oval Office, so the signing can be done. So what normally happens when Trump gets a group of people together? It's a photo op, right? He's got a photo op, whereas he presents a picture, but somehow somebody says something else about what's being presented. So let's look at this from the perspective. Let's say a couple of weeks after the initial statement Trump gave, giving his support for the HBCU legislation. Weeks later, 64 HBCU presidents gathered around Trump in the Oval Office for a photo op, an image that went viral for an entirely different reason, but one that critics said was a perfect representation of the administration's fall commitment to HBCUs, aka false commitment. Later that month, DeVos, or Betsy DeVos, she was the education secretary at the time, DeVos linked historically Black colleges to her school choice agenda and lauded them for being pioneers in the school choice movement. They started from the fact that there were too many students in America who did not have equal access to education. They saw that the system wasn't working and there was an absence of opportunity, so they took it upon themselves to provide the solution. School choice had nothing to do with it, but there was always an agenda. So this agenda was put in place so Trump could kill two birds with one stone. Number one, say that I saved the Blacks, I saved the education, but at the same time for DeVos to say that, oh, look, while we're saving Black education for the HBCUs, they've also opted in to say that they support the school choice program, which is nothing more than privatizing public education. That's a different show in itself. So we'll get to that later. More to come. Notably, HBCUs were founded and developed in a time of legalized segregation when Black students in America had very few, if any, options for higher education. So always keep in mind here that when you see anything with our Black leaders, and I'm talking to Black folks right now, when we have our Black leaders who muster at the White House while Donald Trump was there was always some ulterior motive that was going to be done. Regardless of how you look about it, how you think about it, there's always a plan in the background that Trump is going to use for that opportunity to create another one. Now, speaking of Betsy DeVos, now as I've just shown here, this article pertains to the last article where she, out of nowhere, linked Black colleges to school choice. All right, there's the statement that I've just read here. Sure, there's a little bit more. Segregation made HBCUs the only choice for African Americans who couldn't get into white colleges, the Congressional Black Caucus tweeted to DeVos. Betsy DeVos appears ignorant of racial segregation in the U.S., tweeted Kristen Clark, president and executive director of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law. HBCUs are a byproduct of racism during the Jim Crow era. So we saw yet again opportunities that were created to advance a narrative. So this, of course, is back when Betsy DeVos was first brought in, who herself was a billionaire. Her younger brother, a billionaire who ran, I don't know why I'm thinking BlackRock, but he runs his own private firm. You might as well call it an army, or at least he did. I think he probably still does at this point in time. But again, you had a lot of billionaires already in that first administration who were coming in to help Trump support his initiatives. So as we see here, Betsy DeVos was always about trying to privatize education or find ways to work things towards that. The school choice was something that she started in the first administration that has been lingering around ever since. Now, one thing we have to say about Trump when it came to the HBCUs is that where he said that, oh, you've got my unwavering support, people didn't seem to realize that while he was saying this in public, he was actually trying to reduce funding. But I tell you what, before we do that, give me one moment here. Now, recall I just mentioned, right, that there was a senator from Tennessee who had blocked the bill from being passed. I think it was called the Futures Act. So here, let me just get this to you here. And this is from the Thurgood Marshall Fund, all right? The Senate's failure to renew $255 million in annual mandatory funding for historically Black colleges is already having consequences on campuses, wrote Harry L. Williams, president and CEO of the Thurgood Marshall College Fund, in a letter to lawmakers Monday. So I want everyone to keep in mind, this is back in 2017. And this was going on before December 2019, which is when the bill was actually passed. straining my neck here, so I'm just going to move things around. The group, which represents public historically Black colleges, had called on the Senate to pass the Future Act, which would have provided a short-term extension of Title III Part F funds that pay for STEM education at HBCUs. Senator Lamar Alexander, just mentioned him, the GOP chairman of the Senate Education Committee, blocked the bill from passing on a voice vote before those funds expired on September 30th. Alexander proposed that the Senate instead pass a package of higher ed bills that included a 10-year extension of the HBC funding. Democrats who want to reach a deal on a comprehensive reauthorization of the Higher Education Act rejected the offer. In his letter, Williams said TMCF has already seen examples of member colleges notifying employees that their positions or programs will be terminated by September 30, 2020, or sooner if the funding is not reauthorized. These are real jobs held by people who interact with students every day in programs that play a critical role in graduating and retaining students in the STEM fields, among other disciplines, he wrote. The longer we wait to give certainty to these universities, the more institutions will be left with no choice but to begin winding down programs that materially benefit students and employees alike and strip away the institutional knowledge bases that our schools have built over time with support of Title III Part F. Williams called on the Senate to pass the Future Act, which was previously approved by the House before tackling a broader agreement to overhaul the Higher Education Act. So you had a lot that had started when the bill was starting to go through its process, right? But as I was saying before, you had the back and forth that was going on regarding the actual funding. And once funding was put in place, it was just the thing of getting the bill to be passed. Now, I may have jumped forward just a little bit. So what we'll do, let me step back. Move to the side. Let me step back for a second. And let's continue on. Let's take a look at something directly from the United Negro College Fund. Now, I provided this information a long time ago, probably about 3 or 4 months ago, when there was conversations regarding the HBCU's programs and what was going to happen now that Trump was in charge. So I provided this previously, stating for the most part that although people were saying, oh, Trump saved Black universities, he saved them, nobody else did, but he did. The fact is that Trump was actively working to reduce funding. Here, let's go through this. Now, this is May 24, 2017. Now, the first comment that I made here, let's go back to U.S. News World Reports. This was around the 8th of May. UNCF issued the following statement regarding the release of President Donald Trump's fiscal year 2018 federal budget proposal and its potential impact on historically Black colleges and universities. Just 2 weeks ago, after questioning the constitutionality of a long-standing federal HBCU program, that was the financing program we took a look at, folks, President Trump announced his unwavering support for HBCUs. Unfortunately, that support did not translate into increased federal investments in HBCUs. Our preliminary review of the budget proposal reveals only a single budget increase targeted to HBCUs. And in fact, the proposed budget would cut federal financial aid lifelines that thousands of HBCU students depend on to attend college and earn their degrees, said Dr. Michael L. Lomax, UNCF president and CEO. As I said before, duplicitous, sleight of hand, you call it. Once again, Trump said, oh, I'm there, I'll support it. You have my unwavering support. But then when it came down to it, the funding and everything that he stated was not there. President Trump's proposed budget would cut federal student aid programs by more than $143 billion over 10 years. In effect, shifting those resources into defense spending. In contrast, one of President Obama's first initiatives was to reform the federal student loan program by removing commercial banks from the program, which saved nearly 90 billion over 10 years and made possible major investments in Pell Grants and an $850 million 10-year mandatory investment in HBCUs. Now, recall, Trump has spent time also saying that nobody is invested in HBCUs like me. No one has done anything to save them, but I did. So Clinton, I think George Bush, Obama, all of them had contributed and made sure that funding was there. The problem that happened right about the time that we were seeing in this previous article, that again, I'm getting ahead of myself once more, is stating that by the time fiscal year 2018 was coming due, the bill had not yet been signed. And as I was saying before, the bill had been held up, dare I say hijacked, by Senator Lamar Alexander. But we'll go back and read a little bit more of that in just a moment. Excuse me. If President Trump truly wants to surpass President Obama's legacy on HBCUs, then he will need to demonstrate that federal aid under his watch did more to increase access, persistence, and completion at HBCUs, reduce HBCU student debt, and enhance the financial sustainability of these institutions, said Lomax. At a first glance, the fiscal year 2018 budget does not put the government on a path to meet this test. UNCF will continue to work with both Congress and the administration to raise awareness of the budget priorities and needs of HBCUs and the students they serve. So here you can see there's a link you can go to if you want to look at the budget priorities that have been established here, where they say, this is what we need from you. Here's what we are trying to do. So there was an active plan that was in place. So moving forward, let's go ahead and take a look at where this money is falling out. Funded. All right, so we were talking about the grants, right? The president's budget proposal provides discretionary funding of $245 million, or level funding for the Part B, strengthening HBCU's program, while UNCF requested $375 million in full funding for grants, which are vital for the nation's 101 accredited HBCUs and support a broad range of investments in academic and student services, infrastructure and technology, teacher training, fiscal management, endowment building, and scholarship. The budget proposes to fund the historically Black graduate institutions program at $63 million, the same as fiscal year 2017, which is 50% less than UNCF's $125 million full funding request. The HBCU Endowment Challenge grants received no funding. Okay, let me highlight this for you, folks. Remember now, Trump has said that, oh, you've got my full devotion, my full attention. I'm here to make it work. The HBCU Endowment Challenge grants received no funding in the president's proposed budget, despite a call from the HBCU community to revive the initiative with $220 million to boost HBCU endowments that are less than half the size on average than endowments at other institutions. All right, and it just starts going downhill from there. Now, remember, we talked about the capital financing program. So let's have another look, just real fast, just to talk about what it was. The HBCU capital financing program requires eligible institutions to be designated as historically Black colleges and universities and meet credit criteria, including showing the ability to pay. Now, again, nothing about race is a part of this, although Donald Trump talked about how race played a part in this. It does not. It's clearly stated here. And as I always do, I provided information, or if you go to Google, type in that particular string, and it will give you the same thing that I've got here, so you can look over this for yourself in the future. This program, we're talking about the capital financing program again. This program, which was recently subjected to unfounded constitutionality concerns, provides low interest loans. So basically what they're doing here is recapping what I've read here previously from the previous article. So let's just scoot ahead here. Sports. We'll go ahead and go on to Pell Grants, because again, we've already covered pretty much what the financing program was there to take care of. Pell Grants. Low-income students at HBCUs and other colleges would see their Pell Grants frozen over the next 10 years under the president's proposed budget. The lack of inflation adjustments to the Pell Grant would drive its already historically low purchasing power to new lows. In addition, the president's proposed budget would cancel $3.9 billion in available Pell funds that are needed for program improvements, on top of rescission of $1.3 billion. Okay, he's taking back now. Remember, Trump is all about, hey, I'm here to support HBCUs. You got my unwavering support. Money is now being pulled away. On top of rescission of $1.3 billion proposed by the administration and enacted in the fiscal year 2017 budget. In total, $5.2 billion would be taken from Pell reserves if Congress approves this proposal. The president's budget would maintain funding for summer Pell grants, which Congress permanently reinstated in the fiscal year 2017 budget. So we're looking at money just being flued out, just gone, based upon his public persona of, I'm here to help you with this, but in the background, he's actually defunding, or he was defunding. Supplemental education opportunity grants. The proposed elimination of $733 million of SEOGs, a vital program that supplements Pell awards to the poorest students to pay college tuition, would negatively impact more than 55,000 HBCU students who rely on this assistance to go to and through college. Federal work study. The president's budget requests $500 million, a 50% cut for federal work study. Reductions to these funds could impact more than 26,000 HBCU students who receive work study jobs that not only help pay for college expenses, but also enhance their employment prospects. Perkins loans. The president's budget proposal eliminates Perkins loans for financially needy students, including more than 10,000 HBCU students who rely on these loans when grant aid is not sufficient to meet their college expenses. But he's all about supporting HBCUs. Subsidized student loans. The president's budget request also would end subsidized federal student loans for financially needy students. In effect, this proposal would increase loan debt for more than 6 million undergraduates, making college less affordable in the long run. In 2014, 65% of HBCU students, more than 165,000 students, received subsidized loans compared to only 37% of students at non-HBCUs. UNCF's recent study, Fewer Resources, More Debt, documents that HBCU students already incur more student loan debt than other students, despite attending affordable institutions. Yet, the student aid reductions in the fiscal year 2018 budget would increase their debt burden. All right, we're just about there, folks. Public service loan forgiveness. The budget proposal would eliminate loan forgiveness for eligible borrowers who are employed full-time in public service careers. If enacted, changes to the program take effect July 1st, 2018. Now remember, we're looking at previous actions. I'm pretty much setting the foundation for where we are today. Program takes effect July 1st, 2018, which grandfathers 550,000 individuals who have been approved for this program. African American students overwhelmingly choose careers in public service, which includes roughly 1 in 5 Black adults. New income-driven student loan repayment. UNCF welcomes the administration's proposals to consolidate 5 loan repayment plans into one single plan. UNCF has long recommended this student loan reform that is essential for the 80% of HBCU students who borrow federal subsidized and unsubsidized loans. We hope to work with the administration on the details of the plan, which differ in significant respects from the current repay plan. So you can see there's plenty more here that's discussed as far as what they're proposing to do. But ideally, as I stated here, for everything that Donald Trump was talking about, there in the background was the reduction in funding that was being worked on. But, wait for a second here. Now, we've got to think about this, folks. Now, we're getting ready at a point in time for 2018, 2019. What's coming up? The 2020 election. So whatever type of money that he was currently pulling back from, funding started to take place. More so, funding was starting to take place because of the fact that In order to become president or stay president, what do you need? You need votes. Now, before we go a little bit further, there's a site that I came across here called inside highereducation.com. But the question that that I normally get asked is, how do I go about vetting the sites that I provide here? Now, for any of you who may have followed me a few months back when I released my little fact checking series, I went about certain websites that you could go to help decide whether or not you were dealing with disinformation, misinformation, or just all out bad information all the way around. But the thing is that you have to look at your sources and where you get your information from. So I went through 3 particular sources. One right here is Media Bias Fact Check. You also had All Sides, Media Bias Fact Check. And then you had Ad Fontes Media. And then a fourth one, I believe it's Ground News. So I utilize all 4 of those when I'm trying to figure out where information is and who's saying it and whether or not it can be corroborated in different areas. So for the purpose of this particular video, I went with Media Bias Fact Check because they've been around the longest and they are the most accurate as far as I am concerned. That sounds biased in itself, but I'll let the facts speak for themselves. So what does Media Bias have to say about inside highereducation.com? And it says right here that it is on the cusp of least bias and left center. Now notice you got right center, right extreme, and you got left center, left and extreme. So any position, whether it be right on the line between left center and least biased or right center and least biased, that's still a good position to be in. So as you can see right now, it's stating here that the information that is gleaned from this site, or that you can glean from this site, is rated high in factual reporting. So notice here in bold, overall, we rate inside higher education left center biased based on editorial positions that slightly favor the left. And if this were on the other side where it said right center bias, it would slightly favor the right. We also rate them high for factual reporting due to proper sourcing and a clean fact check record. If you look down here, the most important thing other than saying factual reporting high is to see their credibility rating, which is high credibility. Scrolling down a little further, here's another section that I'd like to see that is clear, which means that we have no failed fact checks. So that is something that you definitely want to look towards if you're going to cite any information that you've been told, or you want to make sure that if there's information that you want to present, you verify whether or not what you're getting is good. So this goes back to the next statement I made here. Did Trump save HBCUs? Now take a look at the date. January 22nd, 2020. So what do we know that's going on, folks? In about 10 months, there's going to be an election. So in order to win elections, what do you need? You need votes. And if you're going to if you're going to get votes, or you need to get the votes you need, what are you going to do? You are going to pay attention and listen to your constituents, or if necessary, you're going to sell your constituents enough information that they believe you're going to take action in order to get their votes. He's good at this. So again, did Trump save HBCUs? President engages in useful hyperbole by claiming he rescued historically Black colleges, but his administration has made good on some of its promises to support the sector. So he made that statement at the Davos Economic Conference. But as it says here, you can see folks were quick to say, oh, no, no. Let's go ahead and do this again, Mr. Trump. That's not exactly true. And the statement again, I saved HBCUs. We saved them. We saved them. They were going out and we saved them. We saved them like no one else had ever saved before, or whatever it is that nonsense he does, right? So then again, the article goes back over some of the facts that we've already covered here. The president's brief comment appeared to refer to the bipartisan legislation dubbed the Future Act that the US Congress passed in December. The legislation made permanent $255 million in annual STEM funding for minority-serving colleges, including roughly $85 million specifically allocated to HBCUs. Let's do this. Since we're using up some resources, we'll go ahead and close what we've already been through, just so we don't chew enough resources up again here. There you go. We'll get rid of you, and you. All right. So again, moving to that point here, remember when I talked about how there was a stopgap, or not exactly stopgap, but the program had lapsed because of a retiring senator? Let's go ahead and go back to that. So we'll just sneak over here like so. So again, we've already read the Thurgood Marshall College Fund that was saying that if the money was not received by the 30th of September, then they were going to have to start cutting people and letting them go. Now, recall I said that this was not by design expected to happen, but it occurred because there was one, oh my God, let's get out of here. But there was one senator who did block it. And the senator who blocked that again was Senator Lamar Alexander from my home state of Tennessee. Efforts to renew more than 255 million. See, we just pointed that out, did we not? Efforts to renew more than 255 million in annual funding for minority serving institutions appear to be on the rocks after Senator Lamar Alexander, a Tennessee Republican, blocked legislation Thursday that would provide a short-term extension of the money. Alexander, chairman of the Senate Education Committee, objected to unanimous passage of the legislation known as the Future Act and proposed in its place a long-term extension of Title III Part F funding, along with a package of bipartisan higher education bills. The proposals he named included popular proposals to streamline the free application for federal student aid and lift restriction on Pell Grants for some incarcerated students, and more contentious ideas such as expanding Pell eligibility for short-term career education programs. He also proposed expanding Pell Grant eligibility for 250,000 new college students and boosting the value of the maximum award, ideas that would typically be supported by Democrats. But critics said the plan falls well short of dealing with the most serious challenges in higher education, including accountability and affordability. So as you can see here, what Lamar is proposing is adding on cost, which is what folks didn't want to do, because they want the bill to pass that will be within everyone's, let's say, stomach range of acceptance of financing. But again, as I stated before, at this time, this is something that Alexander was doing to make sure that when he left, his legacy was intact. But that's just something I wanted to bring up to everyone regarding how this whole issue came up to where the bill had lapsed, and Trump himself ended up signing the bill after the lapse moment. But the lapse moment occurred because of Senator Alexander. Now, if we look up above here, you can see where there was nothing but praise, right? There was nothing but praise December 19th. I think the bill was signed 18th? Well, yeah. Trump signs bill restoring funding for Black colleges. President Donald Trump on Thursday signed a bipartisan bill that will permanently provide more than $250 million a year to the nation's historically Black colleges and universities, along with dozens of other institutions that serve large shares of minority students. Now notice here, there's that dollar figure, 250 million again, right here. So if anyone had any questions about the information that I'm presenting, based on what you've seen here, you can easily corroborate what I've said to actions that links everything together. All right, I have literally cross-referenced enough information that you can tie this all together with the string and put a bow on. If the questions were, well, when did the problem start? What was being removed? What type of funding were people losing? Why was the bill stalled? Who was responsible for stalling the bill? When was the bill finally signed? After it lapsed? All of that has been pointed out for everyone, so there should not be any questions if someone were to ask, well, what stalled the bill out from being signed and caused it to be signed late? You got that information. But one thing I want to point out here is that at the time when Trump signed it, he had said that, remember, oh, I saved the bill. No one was doing anything, but I brought it back to life. Let's go a little bit further. In signing the bill, Trump said historically black schools have never had better champions in the White House. When I took office, I promised to fight for HBCUs, and my administration continues to deliver. Remember that line. A few months ago, funding for HBCUs was in jeopardy, but the White House and Congress came together and reached an historic agreement. They came together, but what he did not point out was the individual who blocked it to begin with. Crazy, right? But as we know, the bill was passed and que sera, sera. So we'll take that out of the way. So again, we see the money is taken care of, STEM is approved, everything is put into a permanent position. And a statement that Trump made was, well, no one took care of it like I did. And matter of fact, I believe there was a statement he made, see if I can find that, where he said that Obama never funded or properly funded the HBCUs. Did I move that? Those retreads. Yeah, you know what? We'll let them go for right now because that'll get us off track. But just understand for right now that once that was put in place, there was the Easter egg that I mentioned before about HBCUs, where Trump had said that, oh, there's an issue with the funding, or at least his administration was saying that we will follow the rules according to the Constitution, where he threw in race, gender, everything he could more or less to leave that Easter egg in the event he had to come back with future legislation to point out discrepancies inside of what was being proposed under the capital financing program. Congress passed the legislation after months-long negotiation over several higher education bills. Trump signed the law in December, so as fact checkers rightly noted, it's a stretch at best for the president to claim he single-handedly saved the colleges by signing the law. Now, of course, everyone talked about legitimate points that could be made. Everyone's going to have their say about what it took to get the bill paid. Of course, it's going to happen like that. Everyone wants to save face. In the end, HBCUs needed Trump to sign that. Trump was not going to let anybody know that the whole reason that it did not get signed in a timely manner was because of one of the Republicans blocking it. But in the end, once it did come true, well, because the bill had lapsed, he signs the bill. But on top of that, more or less just makes it permanent, which means that it was never, it being funding for HBCUs, it was never, pardon the bad English, not being funded. It just lapsed for a moment. But once he got it restarted and made it permanent, he made it seem like, again, oh, look what I've done. I've saved this. There's one particular point that I want to make mention here because there was a rule that was rescinded regarding the monies for HBCUs. For example, let me back up for a second. National groups that represent HBCUs have sought to cultivate close ties to the Trump administration. While those efforts have been controversial on HBCU campuses, the sector's leaders have had some successes. In particular, they point to increases in key funding streams. For example, during the last 3 fiscal years, and again, we're talking about 2020 at the time, January 2020, during the last 3 fiscal years, federal programs that the United Negro College Fund deems most important to HBCUs have seen a collective increase of more than $200 million in funding, said Rodriguez Murray, UNCF's Senior Vice President of Public Policy and Government Affairs. Now notice again, I said that it is an election year. So all the cuts that Trump was previously looking at cutting out and defunding, the money started going in. Why? Because it's an election season. And in order to get the votes you need, you've got to listen to your constituents. Now, this is just my perspective on that. But again, if you look at the timing of everything and look at also what we read, where it was stated by the United Negro College Fund, Trump's proposal was defunding them. But here we see that money is now shown to be rolling in or in the process of coming in. All right, the assurities have been put in place. For example, the Strengthening Historically Black Colleges program, which is part of Title III, which we discussed, increased from $245 million in the federal support in 2017 to $325 million this fiscal year. And when he says this fiscal year, he's talking about fiscal year, what is it? 2020. So that should be fiscal year 2000. Yeah, fiscal year 2020. So yeah, so the money had come in and was being shown that it could be there. As I said before, it's an election year. Advocates for Black colleges also had been quietly opposed to the Obama era borrower defense rule. When DeVos ruled back the rule, provoking sustained condemnation from consumer advocates, the department cited a letter from UNCF that challenged several provisions in the rule. So does anybody here remember what the Obama borrower defense rule was? See if I can find it. Hopefully I've still got that. Here we go. The Obama era borrower defense rule, initially designed to protect students from predatory institutions, enabled loan forgiveness for those who had been defrauded by their schools. It was finalized in 2016 with an initial implementation date of July 1st, 2017. But its implementation was delayed by the Trump administration. Not done yet. You know me, I'm not done yet. Key features of the Obama era rule included loan forgiveness. Students who could prove their school engaged in substantial misrepresentation, financial harm, or breach of contract could seek forgiveness of their federal student loans. Automatic discharge. In some cases, if a borrower couldn't re-enroll at another eligible institution within 3 years of their school closing, their loans would be automatically discharged. Focus on closure. The rule was partly a response to the closure of Corinthian colleges and other for-profit institutions. Delayed implementation. The Trump administration initially delayed the rule's implementation and later introduced a new set of regulations that went into effect on July 1st, 2020. Individual applications. Borrowers were required to file individual applications to prove their claim of misconduct. So what we're seeing right here is that Obama, if you recall, had put in place a rule to protect everyone from these predatory schools. But ask yourself right now, what U.S. president, who's currently sitting right now, had his own school that was shut down because of fraud and just mismanaging, pretty much just hosting students? Oh, cool. We know who this guy is, right? Forgive me for jumping ahead. Trump University. An article in the National Review called the organization a massive scam. Trump University was also the subject of 2 class actions in federal court. The lawsuits centered on allegations that Trump University defrauded its students by using misleading marketing practices and engaging in aggressive sales tactics. So explain this to me. So what are we doing here, folks? What are we doing if we've got the guy who's supposed to be in the seat helping folks with their educations, to help also HBCUs and other colleges receive the funding they need, but he's being cited for trickery and fraud? How does that even work? Well, for whatever reason, he made it through his first term, and only thing they ended up doing was shutting down Trump University, among other things. But that's what we'll focus on for right now. So I want you to look at this, right? So going back to 2018, Trump had already been hit for fraud in with Trump University. Now, this was April 9th, 2018. The article we're reading right now is from 2020. So everyone is fully aware that, wait a minute, Donald Trump had already been forced. Well, let me just go ahead and read part of this for you. Judge finalizes $25 million settlement for victims of Donald Trump's fraudulent university. And this guy is in the middle of doling out funds. Federal judge in the Southern District of California on Monday finalized a $25 million settlement to be paid to attendees of the now defunct real estate seminar called Trump University. Judge Gonzalo Curio's decision came after an appeals court rejected arguments from a Florida woman who attended Trump University and said she wanted to pursue a separate lawsuit. New York Attorney General Eric T. Schneiderman called the settlement a victory for Trump U victims. Judge Curio's order finalizing the $25 million Trump University settlement means that victims of Donald Trump's fraudulent university will finally receive the relief they deserve, he said in a statement, adding that the amount surpassed the initial number the class action suit initially negotiated. This settlement marked a stunning reversal by President Trump, who for years refused to compensate the victims of his sham university, the statement added. My office won't hesitate to hold those who commit fraud accountable, no matter how rich or powerful they may be. So, seeing that all this went on with Trump University, where there was settlements needing to be made with students who attended that, who had been pretty much defrauded out of their money, why did people actually believe that there was going to be some type of successful ending with Donald Trump working with the HBCUs? Why would anyone even believe that, right? Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll just take these guys out of the mix. So where we're ending up before, he was talking about we're talking about the Obama era borrower defense rule. So ultimately, as we get down through this, it was put in place for people who have been preyed upon by predatory institutions to assist them with financial issues. All right, so I think I've just about got everything keyed up and out of the way. As I said before, I wanted to build the foundation. Now, it's been a minute. It's been almost an hour or so, but I hope with the information that I provided, anyone can go back and make heads and tails of what's being said. You've got a foundation here that's going to lead into what we're going to discuss next. So what are we going to be talking about right now? Well, before we get into it here, let's go back to 2010 here. President Obama signs executive order promoting excellence, innovation, and sustainability at historically Black colleges and universities. And here are the dollar amounts that we talked about earlier, previously in HBCU funding. But this is a little bit further back here. We're talking about what President Obama had provided. Apart from the executive order, President Obama has demonstrated his commitment to strengthening educational opportunities at HBCUs through his fiscal year 2011 budget, which includes, take a look at this, folks, $98 million in new money for HBCUs at the Department of Education. This includes 5% or $13 million $13 million increase for the strengthening of HBCU's program and support for the $85 million in mandatory funding for HBCUs in the pending Student Aid and Fiscal Responsibility Act. You know what? I've read enough for the most part. So if you need to get this information, I've got it right here where it can be found, okay? But moving on here, where is this going to take us? It's going to take us to where we are right now, to whereas Donald Trump in the recent days here has rescinded funding from HBCUs. Now, this is the guy. For the last hour or so, we've been reading about how he's looking to support HBCUs. His support is unwavering. He's going to be there. I saved the HBCUs. Then he tanks the funding. Section 1. Historically Black colleges and universities remain integral to American students' pursuit of prosperity and well-being, providing the pathway to a career and a better life. This, this order will continue to work begun. Nope, it's their writing, not mine. During my first administration, to elevate the value and impact of our nation's HBCUs as beacons of educational excellence and economic opportunity that serve as some of the best cultivators of tomorrow's leaders in business, government, academia, and the military. Now, I want you all to keep this in mind of what he's saying right now, although he's made statements of Black history, which is the education that comes with that, divisive and racist. Again, divisive and racist is what he said about elements of Black culture, education. But we needed historically Black colleges and universities in order to provide education so people would know the history. But one area of this, notice how he's giving praise, but in another, he's calling divisive and racist. Now, I can go through this and we can look at all the flowery words that Trump is putting out here, but that's all this is, fluff for the most part. Imagine right now what's happening is that he's taken away funding and said that, okay, but I've got something to replace it. I'm rescinding funding for HBCUs, but I've got something that I can put together in place of that to offer you. Now, where have we heard this before? We went through 4 years of his administration talking about replacing the Affordable Care Act, and I'll put something better in place. Just give it a couple of weeks. We'll have something in weeks, and there was never anything. So that's the possibility of what we might be looking at when it comes to the HBCU funding. So rather than get everyone wound up with all the fluff here, let's just go to the main part that really matters here, the revocation. Executive Order 14041 of September 3rd, 2021, White House Initiative on Advancing Educational Equity, Excellence, and Economic Opportunity through historically Black colleges and universities is hereby revoked. Within 14 days of the date of this order, the administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency shall terminate the historically Black colleges and universities and minority serving institutions advisory council. So the council is gone, funding is gone, it's a wrap. Okay, it's wiped off the board. But again, he's all about standing and supporting historically Black colleges and universities. So if anyone is wondering, there we go, what Executive Order 14041 was, this is what Joe Biden has signed. So here we go. Let's just start right here. I'm going to do this one paragraph, but again, the information is here for your reference if you need to find it. What was that all about? HBCU's successes have come despite many systemic barriers to accessing resources and opportunities. For example, compared to other higher education institutions, on average, HBCUs educate a greater percentage of lower income Pell Grant eligible students while receiving less revenue from tuition and possessing much smaller endowments. Disparities in resources and opportunities for HBCUs and their students remain, and the COVID-19 pandemic has highlighted continuing and new challenges. These challenges include addressing the need for enhanced physical and digital infrastructure in HBCU communities and ensuring equitable funding for HBCUs as compared to other institutions of higher education. The federal government must promote a variety of modern solutions for HBCUs, recognizing that HBCUs are not a monolith and that the opportunities and challenges relevant to HBCUs are as diverse as the institutions themselves and the communities they serve. So there was a strong thumbs up that President Biden put in here for the support of that. But again, as you saw in the previous tab, this has now been officially revoked. So let's go ahead and get you guys off the map here. Now, this is the article that caught my attention right when it was made known. Trump rescinds HBCU support, a dismantling of opportunity for our youth. And this was from Black Enterprise. The Trump administration's recent decision to rescind the White House initiative on historically Black colleges and universities formalized in Executive Order 14041, which we just read, of September 3rd, 2021, represents a grave disservice to American higher education and a direct affront to the aspirations of Black students. Now, the one thing that still torques me about this is how Trump talked about when he started his DEI initiative of just unraveling everything. DEI, meaning code Black, which it wasn't. But upon him doing so, he talked about, well, we need a merit-based system. We need to go back to merit-based systems. The problem here is that there weren't any merit-based systems because merit-based systems were not in place. That was the whole reason why HBCUs were created. It was the main reason behind going further in the future. The civil rights division inside of the Department of Justice, affirmative action, Operation Push, the Rainbow Coalition. All these actions were put into place because merit-based solutions were not there. Because if you were Black or any other color, you were not being considered for certain jobs. You weren't considered for homes. You weren't considered if to go into bank or to get loans, anything like that. All of that was restricted based upon an individual's color at one point in time, meaning that there was no merit until a merit-based system was put in place, which is what we had, or at least we know that is what Donald Trump is targeting right now. Anything that is merit-based, centered around Black culture that he can replace, effectively reduces the ability for Blacks as a whole to even be recognized as citizens in the country if he keeps making his way down the path, which essentially is going to lead to the 1964 Civil Rights Act and the 1965 Voting Rights Act. But I'm getting far ahead of myself right now. The move, detailed in the April 23rd White House order, threatens to undermine the progress and potential of institutions that have been vital to the advancement of African Americans for generations. The stated purpose of the now revoked Executive Order 14041 was to elevate the value and impact of our nation's HBCUs as beacons of educational excellence and economic opportunity. And so then it goes on here, just citing information that was captured inside of Joe Biden's executive order, which now has been rescinded. But still, they're letting you know that the full text can be found at the White House Archives website, which is where we were. So in going back and looking at the information that we've discussed here, one of the things that we have to look at is the cost. And being that we've already discussed pretty much the cost of what it takes to be a part or for an HBCU to maintain its financial status, we saw that there's a lot of money that comes in the direction to support HBCUs because they do not have the funding as other non-HBCU colleges do. Or let's think about some of these large colleges that have got financial backing from families with names, Carnegies, the Rockefellers, things of this nature, folks who got money behind their name. Of course, you can expect donations to be made in a sizable amount to keep those schools open, but you rarely find that for HBCUs. The cost of being an HBCU, but we'll read through a few things right now. Historically, Black colleges must pay more to issue bonds than institutions of comparable financial strength, studies finds. Now, this is going back to 2016, by the way. Colleges typically have their finances and institutional strength reviewed by rating agencies before seeking to issue bonds. The idea is that those buying bonds don't need to rely on colleges' word that they are credit worthy. The varying ratings theoretically provide investors with a sense of relative risks associated with bonds from different colleges. Institutions with the same financial strength or weaknesses should be able to issue bonds at the same cost. But again, as it's going into and what was relayed in previous articles that we've seen, HBCUs do not have that type of funding. So let's do this. Let's slide down here to where we can look at the crux of the matter here. The average cost of issuing a $30 million bond was $290,000 for historically Black colleges, compared to $242,000 for other institutions. The Black institutions studied spent about $5 million or $5.1 million more collectively than comparable predominantly white institutions. The gap in costs faced by historically Black colleges versus non-HBCUs was greater in the Deep South than elsewhere, the study found. Is anybody surprised by that? So there was one part here where they really got down to crunching numbers. Did I pass up? Went past that. Many historically Black colleges, due to decades of discrimination, are weaker financially than many predominantly white institutions. But the study compared pools of historically Black and predominantly white institutions with the same bond ratings. So the study's conclusion is based on comparing institutions of comparable financial strength as verified by outside evaluations. The study was based on an analysis of 4,145 bonds issued by tax-exempt colleges between 1988 and 2010. Of those instances, 102 involved historically Black colleges. The pool included colleges that issued bonds more than once. Of the 102 bond issues by Black colleges, there were 45 colleges involved, which goes back now into what we just read here previously. So the gap in costs faced by historically Black colleges versus non-HBCUs was greater in the Deep South than anywhere else the study found. Let's go with the last two paragraphs here. The only factor that couldn't be ruled out was the race associated with the colleges involved, Mayu said. The typical investor or decision maker on the purchase for these bonds is a rich white person. So there's a lot to be said of how funding for the bonds come into place here. But as always, like I say many, many times before, you can always cross-reference the information that I bring here, that you can go back, take a look, tie it all together. That brings you back to a point where we are right now, which again is looking at the fact that we have seen HBCUs lose their funding. So this was just a quick take here and just taking us back to seeing how everything came to be. Now, this is an article that I just came across recently here. Now, if possible, I'm going to do what I can to get somebody from the Washington Post, I believe this is where the story may have come from, to come on the show, hopefully. It's going to take me a while here to work at this because not a lot of folks are looking at small podcasters. But nonetheless, I want to try and get someone here that we can have this conversation from a more in-depth perspective. But in the meantime, I guess folks are just going to be stuck with me. Raw deal. Analyst shames Trump for luring Black voters with bait and switch. This is what I was saying when I talked about that particular article that was put out January 22nd, 2020, where I stated after the Future Act was signed, we saw that money was now coming to the Black colleges, to the HBCUs. And as I said before, it was an election year. So during the course of an election year, you are going to want your constituents to vote for you. So therefore, you have got to be ready to listen to their issues. However, after I listen to your issue, doesn't necessarily mean I may take action, but I'll damn sure have your vote, which is what was the case. President Donald Trump has prioritized the wrong values, according to Washington Post columnist Theodore R. Johnson. And the minority groups he courted during the presidential campaign are paying for it. Yeah. Again, let's look at what's going on right now. We're looking at the economy, right? We're looking at the tariffs that were put into place. We're looking at the government in disarray because of those going through and firing various senior people in government places that were the guardrails. All of this has gone haywire, but again, Trump got what he was after, which were people votes. All right, he got everyone's votes. The promises Johnson believes are not being kept come from the Platinum Plan, which Trump allegedly touted as his method of economically empowering Blacks. Now, remember, he ran that Platinum Plan back in 2020. In exchange for support at the ballot box, Trump offered measures such as equitable lending programs for Black communities, the creation of 500,000 new Black-owned businesses, and the establishment of diversity training and accreditation standards for police departments. Diversity training. But yet he puts the kibosh on diversity, education, and inclusion. But remember, these are all the things that he sold before the election was closed or over. The scholar of Black electoral politics claims the promise of diversity training and racial equity was mostly a bait and switch. Trump has used the bully pulpit and executive orders to unleash an offensive against diversity, equity, and inclusion initiative, which seeks to forbid most of these actions he once proposed. Anybody willing to argue about that? Seriously. Let's fold for a second, just for a moment. Can anyone argue what was just stated? Stand by for a moment, folks. So with the sweat off my face. So as I was saying, Trump made a slew of promises, but you saw right there that it was mentioned about the diversity, education, and inclusion that he had talked about. And then as soon as he got in office, he wipes all of it out. He had an executive order ready to go as soon as he walked in the front door. So you have to now, well, I can't say you have to. One would hope you realize that everything that you're hearing from Trump is not the truth or not the bill of goods that he sold. They definitely are not. We are looking at everything he said he was going to do that he has not done, and then he's done a little extra on top of that. But hey, let's get back to this. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about is the Minority Business Development Agency, because that took a hit also. It was completely scrapped. Matter of fact, let me see if I still have this. Thought I had that ginned up here. Just a moment, folks. Let me see if I can get this for us. Minority, it was here. There we go. Yep, the agency was shut down. So if I could, I want to see if I can find something that states what it is. Let's do this. It would probably form a better basis to work from. Here we go. So let me just add this in here for a moment. All right, the Minority Business Development Agency is a U.S. federal agency with the Department of Commerce that promotes the growth and global competitiveness of minority-owned businesses. MBDA focuses on creating an economy of equal opportunity for minority-owned businesses. Yeah. All right. So here's more of a detailed look. Let's look at this. To foster the growth and global competitiveness of minority-owned businesses, to unlock the country's full economic potential by empowering minority businesses, to help minority businesses access capital, secure financing, and navigate international regulations. So there's a key list here of other factors to be considered here, but ideally, what I wanted everyone to get an idea of is what it was. All right, again, one last time, The MBDA is a U.S. federal agency within the Department of Commerce that promotes the growth and global competitiveness of minority-owned businesses. So let's do this. Let's go. Plus, shut down. All right. Oops. Let me take something out of this and try this again. All right, there we go. Congressman Grace, let's look at this. Congressman Grace Ming. I think there was a statement that she put out. Here we go. Ming issues statement on executive order shutting down Minority Business Development Agency. Ain't that about a bitch? Remember everything that Trump said that he was going to do to help foster businesses. Remember he talked about, again, 500,000 jobs that would be open for that, diversity and inclusion training for police departments. What happened to all that? Right here. Ming issued statement again on executive order shutting down Minority Business Development Agency. U.S. Rep. Grace Ming, ranking member of the House Appropriations Subcommittee on Commerce, Justice, Science-Related Agencies, today issued the following statement on March 14th executive order to shut down the Minority Business Development Agency. Since the agency's founding under President Nixon, surprising, and strengthening under President Reagan, another surprise. The Minority Business Development Agency has been a lifeline for thousands of American entrepreneurs who are building businesses, creating jobs, and strengthening our communities. With relatively modest annual funding, every year the MBDA helps American businesses secure billions in contracts and financing and supports tens of thousands of jobs. This isn't government waste. It's a smart down payment on economic opportunity and American competitiveness with a fantastic return on investment. In recognition of MBDA's decades of success as an engine of opportunity, Congress permanently authorized MBDA in the bipartisan infrastructure law that Biden passed last year and appropriated $68,250,000 for the agency for fiscal year 2025, which was signed into law by President Trump just last Saturday. This contradicted an action he took one day earlier when, urged on by Elon Musk, President Trump signed an executive order to unlawfully, let's do this one more again, people. When urged on by Elon Musk, President Trump signed an executive order to unlawfully shut down MBDA services for small businesses. This executive order isn't just illegal, it's an attack by billionaires on vital programs that power the American dream for business owners and workers in every state. I expect President Trump and his administration to abide by and implement the funding for MBDA that he approved and signed into law last Saturday. So I'm going to have to go back and do a quick check on that because I don't know if that has been reopened or not. I don't think it has. Now, there were other agencies that made note of this as well, but here's something funny. Tim Scott, all right, Republican, gums and everything. Tim Scott's all the teethuses. Tim Scott was going through South Carolina pushing the Minority Business Development Agency, or the MBDA. I mean, he was just selling it as if he was sitting at the front door when you walked in the building to sign up. He was selling this hard. What did he do when he saw that Trump was getting rid of this at the behest of Elon? He walked up and he told Trump what he needed to hear, right? Who are we kidding? No, he did none of the sorts. Matter of fact, he just stood there. Now, there were pictures. Oh, yeah, there you go. There you go. Black conservatives. There's your dude right there. All about, oh, I love you, President Trump. Yep, he loves having his head carved in Trump's ass. Forgive me, because this is what really pisses me off when I see this type of shit. You know damn well that you're carrying water for the Republican Party. Everything that you are sitting here doing, trying to convince everybody else, oh, they're working out for our best. Has there been anything in this feed from beginning up until now that I've read with Donald Trump's name associated to it that has been for anyone's benefit who is Black? Absolutely not. But yet Tim Scott, Byron Donalds, and a few others will sit here and show their damn teeth and be all in it when Trump shows up or does something stupid. Senator Tim Scott has remained silent as President Donald Trump dismantled the Commerce Department's Minority Business Development Agency, a program Scott spent years supporting. Scott and other Republican colleagues were pivotal in congressional efforts to permanently authorize the federal program that provides mentorship and support, as well as grant funding for business owners and technical support, expanding its reach to rural areas and enhancing the program to help minority-owned businesses during the COVID-19 pandemic. However, in a matter of weeks after Trump's inauguration, the 47th president eliminated all the hard work done by the longest-serving Black senator in Washington, D.C. An anonymous Commerce employee and Democratic staffer said 100% of the agency staff, close to 50 people, have been placed on administrative leave or reassigned within the Commerce Department. The Commerce Department employee called Scott's silence the act of a coward. They are watching this happen and they are doing nothing. That's cowardice, the employee said. And it cuts especially deep when the people you once believed were your champions turn their backs in silence. The conservative leader was once at the front lines of advocacy to expand access to capital and economic mobility for undeserved communities, reminding him of the one he grew up in the rural part of the Palmetto State and minority businesses, including his own Main Street insurance agency. As one of the several Black Trump supporters on Capitol Hill, Scott's team has celebrated the life-changing results for minority communities around the nation while working with the indicted president. So I'm just going to go ahead and just hold it off right here because what I needed everyone to see has been seen. All right, again, if you need to look at the article, the information is right here where you can find it. Again, Senator Tim Scott mums the words as Trump scraps his work on minority business development. And funny enough, hey, Black Enterprise is there to show this again. Oh, we'll hit one last tab here. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with Afrotech, this is a Black tech website that keeps up with what's going on in the world as well as anybody else, right? But ideally, they deal with Black tech. But notice, they also had something to say about this. Minority Business Development Agency gets dismantled after dispersing $3.2 billion in contracts under the Biden administration. Notice we didn't catch that in the other two articles. Let's go ahead and take a bit of this in. A resource for minority-owned businesses may be impacted due to a new round of federal job cuts. Inc. reports new changes are underway at the Minority Business Development Agency, which was first established in 1969 by former President Richard Nixon. Under former President Joe Biden's administration alone, the MDA helped provide 23,000 jobs and $3.2 billion in contracts to minority enterprises, the outlet notes. The Trump administration sent an email on April 17, 2025, stating that federal grants to the agency, which operated about 38 business centers, were being dismantled, as the administration believes the funding is no longer consistent with the agency's priorities and no longer serves the interest of the United States and the MBDA program. President Donald Trump's orders will be a drastic hit to many Black and other entrepreneurs of color. Louisiana's Business Center, which worked with hundreds of businesses, was told the MBDA is repurposing its funding allocations in a new direction to be in compliance with the Trump administration. We had a conference planned for this year that was going to be an event opportunity to provide more training and offer a matchmaking event where businesses could meet with others located in the New Orleans area to identify any potential contract opportunities, said Charlotta Fordson, the program director at the Louisiana MBDA Business Center. According to the outlets, we were able to connect socially and economically disadvantaged businesses to different resources, and that resource is essentially terminated as of April 17th. So what more can be said? I'll say it again. Trump's relationship with HBCUs has been a sham. Now, we saw starting in 2017, 2018, 2019, he was all about support. I'm all in. He was there to make it happen, to which now we can see with a push from Elon Musk in what is one of the most tragic ones, dare I say diabolical settings, Trump crashed the entire MBDA program. So as a Black business owner myself, that's going to affect me to the point now I just have to sit and wait how bad, because at this point in time, when I do get my contracts, I'm usually bidding with somebody else, which is a larger company, and they will call in a smaller company like mine to assist in doing the work. Now, it is a bit of a, I won't say it's a stretch, but it's hard in some places, depending upon how much time you have in the game, to go out and get a contract strictly on your own as a small business. But they do have set aside contracts that do that. Of course, when getting these small set asides, they pair you with a larger company, which is normally a prime on a contract, where the small guy is a sub. But in set asides, the sub, which is the small guy, gets to be the lead as the prime, and the larger company will be the smaller sub in behind. Pause. But nonetheless, what that does is it gives opportunity for that small company to work in the capacity that a large company does, but you have the mentorship of a larger company to assist you and walk you through those rungs, or through the divides, whatever you want to call them, that helps you develop and become a better company as you have more time in the game. But that's pretty much been smoked right now. At least it has for the minority side. So for any of you aspiring business owners out there, take in mind what's going on right now, right? Look around and understand that, as I said before, there is an attack on Black culture. You know what? Let me do this final thing here. Now, Roland Martin released a video about a month, maybe a month and a half, 2 months ago, but somebody has a short that they've wrapped around here for presentation. Let me see if I can bring that up. Let's go ahead and turn the background music off, or we'll pause it. All right, so fair use, fair use.
While a lot of y'all are bullshitting around on whether you can be on TikTok while you're getting caught up in some housewife, while you're having your MJ and LeBron debates on who's the GOAT, there is literally, as we speak, an entire focus to gut every single civil right and economic gain that we have had since 1964, because they are pissed with those three acts. They're pissed with the Brown versus Board of Education Act. You have voucher bills that are being pushed in Texas and Tennessee and other places to gut public education. What we have to understand is there is a vicious assault to completely defund Black America. So while